In this video, we're going to talk about components. Components are sets of facts which go together for some purpose. I'm going to show you an example of a component. I want to explain that every fact exists within a component. Facts can exist in more than one component. I want to explain that components have integrity, that integrity exists between components, and I want to explain the notion that components have a shape. I've talked about components before, but I'll do a quick review. Components are sets of facts which go together for some purpose. Components are a handy way to refer to a portion of a financial report. Components are logical, they make sense. Again, they exist for a purpose, they're not random. So here you see some examples of what I mean by component. Here we see an example of a component. Think of a balance sheet. This is a fragment of a balance sheet. You can see the facts, the characteristics that describe the facts, and we see concepts that you would typically see on a balance sheet: cash and cash equivalents, receivables, inventory, etc. This is what I mean by a component. We will come back to that example in a second, but first I want to go over a couple of other things. So first, facts exist within components, which means facts don't exist on their own, independent of a component. The next idea is that components may have only one fact. Further, facts can exist in more than one component. And facts can have different characteristics within different components. So I mention these things just for you to keep them in the back of your mind. Looking at the example again, I want to point out that components have integrity. Integrity means the component is sound, it's complete, it stands on its own, it's unbroken. The facts within a component fit together correctly in all possible ways. For example, the circumstance that cash and cash equivalents plus receivables plus inventory plus prepaid expenses equals current assets is the proper state for a balance sheet. Things add up correctly. This is one aspect of integrity. This is a different component. The previous component showed the portion of a balance sheet. This component shows the details of cash and cash equivalents. Note the fact that cash and cash equivalents also exists in this component, which details cash and cash equivalents. Note that the components, and note that this component likewise foots properly. Cash on hand plus petty cash plus cash equivalents equals cash and cash equivalents. The point here is that each of those components have integrity. This will make more sense here when we look at the next slide. So integrity exists between components also. So here we see both the balance sheet component and the details of cash and cash equivalents disclosure component. As I pointed out, cash and cash equivalents exists on both of those components. You can see this by the red box. So each component has integrity, but integrity or soundness exists between components also. Financial reports have integrity if each component has integrity and if integrity exists between all the components which make up a financial report. Next, I want to talk about the notion of shape. Characteristics give components shape. So here we see the same balance sheet component and the details of cash and cash equivalents disclosure component. Characteristics give a shape. Notice how the balance sheet component and the details of cash and cash equivalent have the same shape, the same characteristics. So the table shows the information for the components, and the tables look similar because the columns are the same. So that is what I mean by the notion of shape. To summarize all this, again, components are sets of facts which go together for some purpose. We went over an example of a component. We pointed out that every fact exists within a component. They don't exist on their own. Facts can exist in more than one component. Each component has integrity, and integrity exists between components. And characteristics give components shape.